Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining in. Please type in if you can see my slides and hear me out. Type Y in the chat box if you can hear me, and also listen to the music and see the slides. Type Y in the chat box if you can hear me. Just begin in a few seconds. Thank you. Stay tuned. Perfect. Time is 2 o'clock and we are here on another learning journey. So today we'll talk about medical writing and medical writing as a career option for not just the pharmacy professionals, but also other professionals who are interested in this domain. Let's see what we have in today. This session is for you if you are a pharmacist, life sciences graduate, or a medical graduate, or if you are still studying, or if you've already graduated, that's fine. If you are exploring any upcoming new opportunities as a career path, so we in pharmacy, life sciences, and medical graduates, we already know that okay, there are a few career opportunities we have. So we always go by the conventional methods and conventional ways of career opportunities that exist. Medical writing is an upcoming career options that can be for anyone. If you are a pharmacist, life sciences, or medical graduate. If you love reading and if you love writing, especially the scientific and the medical information, right? So if you are in that, if you love that, then this is for you. If you work in pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, and healthcare industry, then this is something that you might be interested in. If you have heard of medical writing and are exploring to know more, then this session is for you. Perfect. Now, before we begin, it's important for us to understand a little bit of drug development process, right? So let's see what happens in drug development process. Initially, before a drug is developed, experiments are conducted in the laboratory environment where the compounds are created, they are experimented. A lot of compounds are created, and based on certain qualities, they are gone to the next phase, which is called as the preclinical research, where for a particular disease, these products are tested and evaluated if animals, in the animals, right? So in animal experiments, we understand if the drug is effective and it is working for the given disease or not. And then once that is through, we do clinical research where the same product is then tested for humans, on humans. And what basically happens here is in the human trials, there are a lot of phases and a lot of processes involved. We'll not get into that. We'll have a separate session on that with a particular process. But for now, just to understand, once the animal experiment is through and cleared, then we go for the clinical experiment, which is human experiment. Right. So once that happens, we apply for approval from the regulatory bodies. And once the development regulatory bodies give the approval, then the product or the drug is marketed under a particular brand name in a particular country for a particular disease. Right. So in this entire processes, all these 5 steps that we just understood, we have writers involved in this. Right. Every phase, a lot of information is created, a lot of data is generated. And what happens to this data and the information? Somebody has to generate documents which can be read by different stakeholders, right? At each stage of the drug development process. And what happens basically is currently in all these stages, those who are involved in the research are they are writing the documents and the information for the other stakeholders. But what is happening nowadays is upcoming is to use medical writers for these services. The medical writers are trained professionals which understand all these processes, all these steps, and they have relevant experience and knowledge to create scientific information in a much readable format for different stakeholders, not just for patients, not just for doctors, not just for regulatory body, but everyone. The same information can be converted in different forms so that it is easily understood, it is easily read, and then the entire process about the drug and the medicine is understood. So I hope you are able to hear me out and also see the slides. So I just let me know in the chat box so that we know everything is working fine technically. Perfect. Thank you so much for responding. Moving on. Medical writing has two important parameters. One is the medical writing itself, the process, and the writer who writes the content. Okay, so medical writing is basically a complex, it's a process wherein a complex scientific information is converted to a clear, concise, credible, complete, and in a compelling manner, in a very, very interesting manner, right? So this is what medical writing is all about. Medical writing involves scientific documents of different types, which include regulatory and research-related documents, disease or drug-related documents for patients, for doctors, and for different stakeholders, right? They also involve promotional literature, publication articles, or journal manuscripts, abstract writing, content writing for healthcare websites, drug-related magazines and news articles. And nowadays, a lot of apps are being developed where medical writers are involved. They create content for these apps also, right? So medical writer usually works very closely with scientists, doctors, and other subject matter experts to create effective documentation and defines research in the form of a very clear and concise document, right? So this is all about medical writing and medical writer, the role of medical writer in creating documents. Now let's see what we have. What are the roles of medical writers? So first role is, of course, to analyze data. Of course, medical writers will not be directly analyzing data, but they'll be working with biostatisticians and statisticians who analyze this data in a very presentable format, which medical writers can understand and create the content from, right? And medical writers should have the ability to read a lot of content, a lot of scientific information, understand it, and then write quality content from there, right? Then they should be able to identify credible sources and references. Nowadays, thanks to Google, we have everything available on Google, but we do not know where the information is coming in from, who's the person behind that information. So the role of medical writer is to understand whether the information is coming from a credible source or not, right? So he or she understands what are the different databases, what are different journals from where the information has been taken, and that is how he or she utilizes that. He or she also provides creative alternative of scientific and medical content. Now, what do I mean by this? So there is a lot of scientific information which is coming in from clinical trials or drug discovery process. Now, the role of medical writer is to create that whole lot of paragraphs and scientific information into presentable formats such as graphs, tables, charts, infographics, and which can be easily read by the readers. He or she can also create some interesting diagrams based on those information, and that is how the reader finds it interesting to read. Remember attention span? We all lack attention span, and we are really struggling with that, right? So any information which can be read in a shorter span of time, which can be made interesting, can be read. So the medical writers help in creating alternate scientific medical content which can be read by the readers very, very easily. They coordinate the entire document process, just not write the document, but also, when the document goes for review to different stakeholders, these are the medical writers who connect with them and then help them review the process. So if there is a suggestion from the stakeholder, it is the role of the medical writer to rework or re-edit the document and send it back. They are supposed to format and edit the document as per the requirement. Now, every stage of writing has a different requirement of formatting and editing. Sometimes a plain Microsoft Word document helps, but many a times it does not. So formatting is important for reading, for readability, and for understanding the document in a very clear and concise manner. Right now, last but not the least, of course, there are a lot of other processes also involved, but then finally it is the role of the medical writer to review the final output or the manuscript that he or she writes. It is not only the manuscript, different types of inputs are written by medical writers, and it is his or her role to finally review and revise it as per the comments or suggestions which are given by different stakeholders. Okay, so this was all about the role of medical writers. And now let's see what are the different types of writing. So first type is, of course, called the scientific writing, wherein all this lab research, whatever is done, right? So that kind of, whatever data is generated in the labs, that has to be, the content has to be created in a very presentable format. So there also the medical writers play a very important role. They work closely with the researchers and lab workers and help them create that information, with the data which is generated in the labs, into a very scientific report or a manuscript or a journal article, and that goes again for a publication. Sometimes they also create important, nice infographics and readable single one-page posters which can be read easily by others, right? So that was one. And the second one is they write for publications. So all the scientific research that happens, ultimately it goes to the world of scientific research through publication into different journals, book chapters, and also newsletters. So medical writers play a very important role in creating publications as well, right? And then finally, medicine or medical related. So all this healthcare information, whatever is published, is written by medical writers or the doctors. Clinical research related documents, all this clinical research that happens throughout the world, medical writers play a very important role. And medical writers work closely during this entire process of research, and then they create documents relevant to the research. Non-clinical, there can be a lot of non-clinical work happening, and medical writers play a very important role in putting those non-clinical work in a very readable format for the end users. Regulatory documents, right? So whenever a product is to be launched in a country or area, the regulatory bodies need a submission from the companies. So that is when medical writers or regulatory medical writers play an important role in creating those regulatory documents for submissions. Medical marketing, it's a very important role where medical writers play an important role. What they basically do is, once the product is approved and is being marketed or ready for marketed, a lot of scientific inputs or promotional inputs or marketing inputs are created. So these are called as visual aids, leave behind literatures or product monographs, or even short videos, posts for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all the other social media platforms. All of that is created by medical writers. They also work closely with doctors and create slide decks for presentation in conferences and CME activities for doctors. So these are the different types of writings which a medical writer can do, and they do it. Currently, they are doing a lot of them. There are different types of other different types of writings that all come under these many groups only. So these are essentially the all different types of writings which medical writers play an important role. And finally, there is another one which is pharmaceutical writing. So all these QA/QC documentations, SOPs, and all these different documents that are created for internal use and also external stakeholders use are also created by scientific writers or medical writers. Generally, all these kinds of documents are created by those who are involved in the research itself. But then nowadays, what is happening is there is an increasing role of medical writers in all these documentation processes. So trained medical writers are in great demand, and they play a very, very important role in creating all these different types of inputs. Perfect. Moving on. So what are the different types of documents that medical writers write? So these are essentially the four different types: clinical, regulatory, non-clinical, and safety. Now coming to the clinical, we have a lot of things like protocol writing, clinical safety study reports, top-line summaries, investigators' brochures, informed consents, case research forms, and all of this will have separate sessions for each of this. But just to understand, these are huge requirement for medical writers in all these areas. Then we have regulatory, wherein we'll create documents for regulatory submissions, and justification documents are created for as to why the product has to be approved in that particular country or region, right? Then we need to create integrated summary of safety reports or safety efficacy reports, which are submitted to the regulatory bodies, and then that really helps the regulatory bodies to clear the product for marketing. And then we have non-clinical, and they are again non-clinical review overviews or sciences. And then we have information or reports related to toxicology, drug metabolism, exposure calculations, protocols, and study reports. These are all different types of non-clinical, which are not related. They are related to mostly experimentations and all. And then finally, we have safety documents, which are created by, again, medical writers, again, in close coordination with those involved in the research itself, right? So these are the different types of documents the medical writers create, and they have been working closely, right? Who can be a medical writer? It's very, very simple. Pharmacy graduates are playing a very, very important key role. Earlier, only MPharm students were eligible for getting into medical writing, but nowadays, B-Pharms, PharmDs are also increasingly playing a role in medical writing. A lot of companies have started hiring PharmDs because they work closely with doctors, and they are working in they're playing a key role in clinical pharmacy, right? So that is when they understand the entire healthcare system, and they know they work closely with patients. So they can be a good potential medical writers and play an important role in medical writing. The doctors, all those doctors who have done MBBS, BDS, and even MD, they can play an important role and be a medical writer. Veterinary doctors, even in veterinary, we need content to be created, and that is when veterinary doctors can play an important role in writing. We have others also. There are people who are from BSc, MSc, and other life sciences, but they have learned the skill of writing, right? And then due to their hard work and experience, they know what writing is. I know a lot of my friends who are from other life sciences like MSc, and they are doing great in medical writing. Some of them they have reached from a basic writer to a very, very experienced writer, and they're leading a team of global teams right now, right? And people from biomedical sciences can also be medical writing, get into medical writing, because they also understand medicine and devices and science, right? So a lot of biomedical sciences companies, they have launched medical devices as well. So these medical devices also need writers to create content. That is when medical writers can play an important role. Now, coming to the skills, there are different skills that medical writers need. The first is, of course, to know the domain knowledge. Domain knowledge is important, and they should know what is happening in the pharmaceutical industry, the different therapy areas, the different types of drugs and medicine, who uses these drugs, what are the drugs for, and all those information, right? So medical, scientific, pharmacology, drug development process, efficacy and safety, regulatory guidelines, statistical expertise to some extent. Not you don't have to know the entire statistics, but you should know the basics of statistics. You should know all this medical terminology. So these are the basic requirements when it comes to the domain knowledge. And then coming to the next one, which is language, you should be good at grammar, spelling and punctuation. You don't have to know what is noun and pronoun, but you should know how to use them in sentences, right? So conveying the message to a very in a very concise manner requires the knowledge of good language. Ability to adapt to writing based on the audience. Again, so the same content will go to a patient, the same content will go to a doctor, the same content may go to a nurse and a pharmacist. Now, the same content, when you are writing for different audience, the language will change, the quality of information will change, and the amount of scientific information that you are putting also changes. Now, your language skill will determine how quickly and effectively you could transform that information for your target audience. So language plays a very, very important role when it comes to medical writing. Research abilities, definitely yes, because you'll be doing a lot of literature search. You will be reviewing a lot of literature and scientific data. You should have an up to date knowledge of different clinical research information that is happening, and you should know where to find the information, right? And then also you should be able to verify that information for its authenticity and quality. All this require this getting research skills help you to generate good quality information and compile information in a very a nice way that can be read easily by the your different stakeholders like patients, doctors, nurses, and pharmacists, regulatory bodies, right? Next, analytical skills. Again, you have to have interpretation of scientific data. So if a table is given to you with a lot of scientific data, you should be able to understand what that data means, and you should be able to analyze that basic data and then reuse it for creating content and presentation of that data into visual formats like graphs, charts, basics. You don't have to know everything in when it comes to statistics and data presentation, but if you know the basics, it's good enough to get started. Obviously, during the course of your journey as a medical writer, you'll all learn all of these different skills, right? So perfect. Going on, moving on, let's see what we have. Next, you should have this ethics and the self-discipline. These are very, very important because it helps you to communicate in a very responsible and accountable manner. You should be responsible for what you have created, what kind of content you have created. Unless you follow the ethics and have the self-discipline, you might not be able to justify the way you are working, right? So it's important. And since this, the writing, the medical writing that we do can help change the decisions of doctors, can help change the decisions of nurses and pharmacists. It's very important that we follow ethics and have self-discipline, because anything and everything that we write can have an impact in somebody's life, right? So it's important to be ethical and self-disciplined. It's very important. And you also need a lot of managerial and personal skills, like for example, your communication skills, your coordination skills, ability to work as a team, ability to work in a different focus groups, have a lot of patience, because there will be always to and fro communications which will be happening with respect to the writing work. You should have logical thinking. Without logic, nothing happens, right? So even in scientific domain, even in medical writing domain, we need to have a lot of logical thinking and understanding. Softwares, the softwares and automations are taking play, they are being utilized increasingly in medical writing as well. So we should be aware of different softwares that can be used. There are software to do research, there are softwares to do create document, there are softwares to use for grammar check, there are software to use for checking plagiarism. There are different softwares that can be used for doing referencing. So knowledge of all these softwares can help you to improve the quality of your work, and it will definitely help you to scale your career as medical writer really, really faster. So these are the different skills we need as medical writers, and all these skills are learnable skills. So if you are lacking any of these skills, do not be scared. Don't think that it is difficult. It's very easy to learn. All that you need is a little patience and the attitude to learn these skills. And there are a lot of, we do a lot of sessions and training programs, so we can also help you in getting the skills, right skills, with time. And of course, once you get into the domain of medical writing, all these skills you'll get to learn slowly, right? So unless we get into a pool of water, we'll not learn swimming, right? So it's exactly the same way it works in medical writing as well. So unless we get into medical writing, we'll not know exactly what happens there, and we'll not be able to learn those skills. Perfect. So let's understand the different careers that medical writing offers to us. Of course, a lot of pharmaceutical companies, biotechnology companies, CROs, contract research organizations, they are hiring medical writers, because all these heaps of documents that are created, that needs to be gone to different stakeholders, audience, right? So that these companies hire medical writers to a great extent, and every single day will have opportunities coming, not just in India, but all other different countries as well. So these are the companies which hire. Then you have agencies, where there are a lot of regulatory service providers, medical communications agencies. They need medical writers as well, right? There are agencies who work with pharmaceutical companies, hospitals closely, and they need medical writers or scientific writers or medical communication writers to create content for different stakeholders like patients, doctors, nurses, and pharmacists as such. Right, then you have publication houses or publishing houses like Springer, Elsevier, Medno, JP in India. These two, three publication houses hire a lot of medical writers. And one way to get connected to all these writers is LinkedIn. If you check my YouTube channel, we have done a lot of training programs on LinkedIn. There are 3 or 4 videos which we did live sessions, and you can follow those videos and learn the basics of using LinkedIn and connecting with all these different writers on different publication places as well. And connection is the first point that helps you to, get into your future job, right? So that is one way of getting into medical writing. There are a lot of knowledge process outsourcing companies that also have started hiring medical writers. And of course, there are a lot of startups that are getting into medical devices and pharmaceutical product development. They are also hiring medical writers, because they know that those who are actually involved in the research may not be good writers, right? So that is when medical writers role is increasingly coming into picture these days. So these are essentially the 4 different types of companies or organizations that hire medical writers. You could try in any of them. And if you need any help, then definitely I'm here. You have access to my email ID. I'm available on LinkedIn, YouTube. Just Google me out and then do connect back with me. Okay. There are a lot of medical and scientific societies and associations. They are also hiring medical writers, because they also need to communicate their important information to the larger world, right? The scientific community and the research community. So all these places you have a great opportunity to get into as medical writer. You have also an option to work as a medical writer in hospitals and academic institutions, right? So hospitals generate a lot of patient data. Doctors do not get time. Doctors want to publish their research in journals and as book chapters in different books. They need support of somebody who is qualified, who knows the art of medical writing or the scientific writing. So if you get connected to any hospitals or academic institutions, you have a great chance of getting into as a medical writer. So it's important to understand where you have an option, right? So these are some of the options that you have. And in case, depending on what is your what is your current experience level, you could definitely get into a different sources of different companies for jobs as well. So now coming to the salary, which is very, very important, right? So if you are a bachelor's degree, the basic salary can be 1 to 2 lakhs per year. If you have done master's degree, again, the basic salary, that is starting one, can be 2 to 4 lakhs. If you are a PhD holder, the starting salary could be 5 to 8 lakhs. These are just the starting salaries. And of course, it depends on you, the company where you are working, the skills that you have, the different value additions that you give to the company. And this is just the very starting salary. It can go much, much beyond this. And you can also work as freelancers if you have the right ability to communicate the scientific information to the larger world. Okay, so perfect. So with this, we come to the end of today's session. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a very short planned session. The next session will be the coming session will have on drug safety, and a doctor will be speaking about the physician perspective on drug safety. So do join me again to next week, 2 o'clock. We'll talk about drug safety and opportunities there. And I do these sessions every Saturday at 2 p.m. So if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe there. You'll get a notification as soon as we go live. And I do also do a lot of other programs for pharmacy and life sciences graduates and masters. So if you want to know more about that, then you can connect with me through all these different channels. You can be part of my Telegram group, or you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. So perfect. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope the session was useful. If you have any questions, I'll be love to take that question and help you out. I'll be also doing a live Q&A session sometime coming week. So stay connected, and I'll announce that on my YouTube and LinkedIn channels shortly. So I'll be doing a live session on medical writing, and Q&A is based on medical writing. So if you have a lot of queries on medical writing, and if you're not able to ask me now, then don't worry, we'll have that live session very soon. And there are a lot of queries that I keep receiving on medical writing. So I thought, okay, let me have a very concise session on medical writing and just share the basic overview of what happens in medical writing. So today's session was only for that purpose, and it was not a very detailed one. If you have any questions, just let me know, and then we are good to go. We'll meet again next week, next Saturday at 2 p.m. for some more learning journey. And stay connected to know more about all these webinars I do. These webinars happen every Saturday at 2 p.m. Thank you so much for your time. And you can put your questions in the chat box or send an email to me. I'll reply back to you as soon as possible. Thank you. Thank you so much.